I want to share a couple of important interactions I've had with animals in the past. This spring, I read a fascinating book called Deep Survival. In the book, it stated that when we are in actual survival situations, we act out of deep emotional places and totally leave our rational, reasoning mind behind. In those moments, we are at our best, and we experience it as the deepest, most compelling, and most satisfying way to live. Reading it, I was reminded of a couple encounters I've had with animals that undeniably incorporated all of that. The first was many years ago, in July of 1996, while on a vision quest in the Gila Wilderness in southwest New Mexico. On the second day of my 4-day solo, I took a long walk downstream. During that walk, I passed through an area thick with oak trees, and being July, they were all full of acorns. I continued a couple more miles downstream, mostly walking in the river because the day was hot and the water was fairly low. On my way back, the river took a sharp bend, and I scrambled up the bank and found myself back on the trail, which brought me to an enormous oak tree whose thick branches spread out horizontally in all directions. When I was about 50 to 70 feet away, I noticed a small animal moving on one of the branches. I looked. The animal was partly hidden, and my brain, like a Rolodex in my head, flipped through the pages trying to answer the question, what is that? What is that? All of a sudden, the image clicked, and I was looking at a baby bear moving along the branch. I then heard a loud noise, and on another branch, heading in the opposite direction, away from where I was the mother. At that moment, she saw me and immediately came barreling across that branch, down the trunk of the tree, hit the ground, and was charging full speed at me. She was making these huffing noises. Hoo, 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 hoo. Each one louder than the one before, which doubled the effect of the locomotive heading my way. Out of the blue, I experienced a split. Two parts of me, both speaking at once. On my right side, I could feel the adrenaline valve getting turned way, way up. While at the same time, on my left, there was another part of me, completely calm, saying, well, you've always wondered when it would happen, and here it is. I became fully aware of my death approaching, and I was totally calm about it. Meanwhile, as both of those things were happening, I did exactly what I was supposed to do. If you're in the company of a bear that might be threatening, you're not supposed to stare it in the eye, because that can be seen as a challenge, and it's not one you're going to win. So I looked slightly askance as Mother Bear charged me, and I began to slowly move backwards. As I did, I was walking in reverse along the trail, and the trail curved around a small thicket of trees, which were now between me and the mother bear, hiding her from my view and me from hers. I expected her to just come barreling through that thicket at any moment, and I would be on the ground. But she never arrived. I continued to back up along the trail and then slowly down the bank and into the stream. There, being 5 or 6 feet lower and out of sight, I turned and walked upstream for several minutes. Then I made my way back up the river bank. And having moved several hundred yards upstream, I was now behind Mother Bear, who was still standing in front of that thicket of trees. I scrunched down behind a big fallen cottonwood and watched as she continued to roar, snarl, and slobber, still facing where I had disappeared, and still seemingly, from her point of view, between me and her baby. I watched for several more minutes until she finally got down on all fours and moved back to her cub. Because of that meeting, I returned to that area each of the next 2 days on my solo. I didn't come across the mother and cub again, but each day I did see bears. Some, upon seeing me, would change direction and soon be gone, while others would drop out of trees and begin to sprint. Fortunately, in these instances, away. That very intense encounter with the mother and her cub was one of the most meaningful and edifying encounters with an animal in my life. I learned something. I learned that the self that I'm familiar with, which is a guy with the usual set of anxieties and fears, was not the person who showed up when the shit really hit the fan. That new fellow, even with all those fears still present, was quite courageous, and he was competent. He knew what needed to happen, and he did it. And I got to say, it's comforting and good to realize that he's around. I had another powerful animal encounter last summer. Again, it was July, and again I was in the Gila wilderness, this time hiking with my partner. We had set up our tarp in a beautiful area off and away from the trail. Our camp was in a big grassy meadow with ponderosa pines, piñones, and juniper. And this meadow was tucked in and surrounded by high, steep hillsides with towering and dramatic rock formations. It was morning and a bright sunny day, and I was lounging on the ground next to a tree and writing in my journal with nothing on except some skimpy, lightweight running shorts. All of a sudden, I caught a bit of movement off to my left, and when I turned, I found myself staring at a large rattlesnake not more than a foot away from me. It had just come around another tree and was heading my way, and abruptly it stopped, totally surprised to see me. And of course, when I turned, I stopped, totally surprised to see it as well. And of course, this was exciting. It was scary. It was exciting. It was nerve-wracking. That snake was perfectly still. It had pulled back a little, not coiled and rattling, but it was very alert and still able to strike. And its eyes were intent on me. Its tongue moved in and out, tasting the air, because that's how they smell. And I sensed it was stuck. It wasn't about to turn around and show its back to me, but I was a foot away and completely blocking its way forward. But I was stuck as well, not about to make any sudden, i.e. threatening, movements. And there we were, facing off, both locked into this intense meeting we both would prefer would soon be over. I tightened my grip on the pad of paper I was writing in, and I slowly lifted it into the air. I saw the snake's eyes following it, and at the end of my reach, I just flicked my fingers, sending the pad through the air. As the snake's attention tracked the falling pad, I quickly rolled away to my right and was up on my feet within a second. Turning back, I saw the snake slithering around the tree and disappearing into the grass. Like my experience with the mother bear, this encounter was exciting, thrilling, and of course, frightening. I was so aware of the snake's movements and attention, and I was willing to meet and hold its attention while simultaneously being completely aware of my fear of being almost naked on the ground with a rattlesnake a foot away from my face. And again, I was struck by how well and competently I had acted in that situation. Each of these events were absolutely wonderful encounters. I remember them fondly and feel like I learned so much about who I am. In neither one did my rational mind contribute much of anything, as I acted out of some place that was pre-rational. Of course, I'm not about to tempt fate and go looking for more of them, but it's comforting to acknowledge that when those situations come, I may be well made for handling them. Okay, that's it for today, and I'll be back to talk more about other animal encounters and experiences I've had in nature in the wilderness. So be well, and I look forward to seeing you again. Oh,